You might be wondering, how do I decide where to begin with exposures? What if there are too many things that trigger anxiety? How do I know I'm doing it right? Welcome back to Quieting Anxiety by Excel at Life. I'm Dr. Monica Frank, and today we're laying the foundation for a series of exposure techniques by talking about how to create a hierarchy for exposure. A step-by-step structure that helps you gradually face the things that make you anxious. Before we begin today's episode, take a moment to acknowledge something important. Confronting anxiety isn't easy. It takes courage, patience, and willingness to feel discomfort, especially when progress feels slow. So right now, bring to mind the idea that you don't have to do everything at once. Imagine standing at the base of a staircase. You don't need to leap to the top. You just need to take one step. Take a breath, exhale, and say quietly to yourself, if I can start small, I can start to change. I don't have to feel ready. I just have to take that first step. You don't need to focus on the top of the staircase. Just imagine yourself taking the first step. Take another breath and let that settle in. Then, when you're ready, let's talk about how to build that staircase, your exposure hierarchy, so you know where to start and how to keep climbing. But before we even get into creating the hierarchy, it's important to recognize that simply writing the list can be an exposure exercise. Why? Because it asks you to bring anxious situations into conscious awareness, many of which you may be actively avoiding, even in your thoughts. Listing them out means confronting the possibility of doing them, and that can trigger discomfort. In fact, I've had clients feel anxious or even tearful just making the list, not because anything is happening in the moment, but because naming the feared situations strips away avoidance and starts the exposure process. So if you notice resistance or emotion as you work through this step, that's not a sign something is wrong. It's a sign that you're already beginning the work of facing your fears. And that's a meaningful first step. If that occurs, take a break and use your anxiety management techniques to help with the anxiety. Now let's walk through the process of making a hierarchy. I'll give you a simple method that you can adapt to your unique experience. The first step is to identify what you're avoiding. Start by writing down the situations that cause anxiety or that you tend to avoid because of it. These don't have to be fully detailed yet. Just start with the broad situations that provoke anxiety or avoidance. Just a note here. I've had clients tell me they never feel anxiety because they avoid anything that might trigger it. That's why your hierarchy may need to be focused on situations that you avoid. Step 2 is to organize your list by categories. As you write your list, you may notice that the items fall into multiple categories. For example, if you experience panic, you might write down avoiding driving long distances, highway driving, large grocery stores, tall buildings, medical procedures, and people in white lab coats. So your general categories might be driving, going in buildings, and medical reminders. If you have social anxiety, you might include things like avoiding assertiveness, public speaking, or attending large gatherings. If you have multiple categories, Group the items on your list into those categories and rank the categories from easiest to hardest. This can be a gut level judgment. Don't worry about being exact. Just think about which general areas feel more or less tolerable. Then choose one category to begin with. That might be the easiest category, or it could be the one that's causing the most disruption in your life. There's no wrong place to start, as long as you start somewhere. One caveat, however, is that if a category only triggers extreme levels of anxiety, it is better to start with an easier category until you are more familiar with the process. The third step is, once you've chosen a category, break it down into specific situations and rank those from least to most anxiety provoking. For example, within the driving category, your list might look like this: 1. Drive around the block. 2. Drive to the nearest gas station. 3. Drive on a quiet road for 10 minutes. 4. Drive on the highway for one exit. 5. Drive in heavy traffic across town. You can revise this list as you go. What feels like a 3 now might feel like a 1 later. This is a dynamic process. The next step is to estimate how anxious each of those situations would make you feel using a scale from 0 to 10. This gives you a working hierarchy from lowest to highest intensity. Sometimes it helps to reorder the list based on this new information. You might think something will be a 3, but after imagining it more closely, realize it's actually a 6. And remember, we're treating this as a living document. You'll refine it as you learn more about your anxiety. Finally, choose a starting point. Here's a key tip from my work with clients. Don't start with your most feared situation. You want to get reliable, steady wins. Start with a situation you estimate to cause a 3 to 4 level of anxiety. This gives you a chance to test how you respond and correct course if needed. Then, once you've had a successful trial run, aim for exposures in the 5 to 6 range, where the anxiety is clearly felt but tolerable. This level provides the most therapeutic benefit early on without overwhelming you. I often find that after I work with someone on an exposure in the 5 to 6 range, their higher level exposures reduce in anxiety based on their successful experience. So something that may have been a 7 or 8 is now a 6 or 7. So that's the basic process of creating a hierarchy. It may vary somewhat for each person and the specific fears that are being addressed. And of course, if you're working with a therapist, they may have their own plan, and that's perfectly okay. Use what's recommended for you. Why is it best to start with creating a hierarchy before approaching exposure therapy? Exposure works best when it's gradual and repeatable. Having a hierarchy keeps you from jumping too far ahead and gives you a clear next step. It also keeps you focused on behavior, not just thoughts. By systematically facing these situations, you're telling your brain, this isn't dangerous. And over time, the fear response calms down. But even if you're doing a flooding type of exposure and starting with higher levels of anxiety, which we will discuss in a future episode, you still need a hierarchy to know what level of anxiety a situation is likely to cause. Many of the upcoming episodes in this podcast will guide you through specific exposure techniques, from thought exposure to behavioral experiments. Having your hierarchy ready will make each of these episodes more impactful. For now, reflect upon the situations in your life that cause anxiety and that are causing disruption to your life. And remember, Just the process of thinking about these situations can cause some anxiety. So be prepared to take care of yourself and use your anxiety management skills. Your task is to take those situations and follow the steps to creating your hierarchy. Our hierarchies, if you have multiple categories. Your therapist can assist you in making this a manageable process. Finally, with your therapist's help, determine where you would like to start. The following episodes will give you guidelines on the different types of exposure techniques and what can be useful in different situations. Before we close today, let your eyes rest or gently soften your gaze. Take a slow, steady breath in and exhale fully. Again, in and out. Now imagine your future self. This version of you has faced anxiety step by step and grown stronger each time. You might not be free of anxiety, but you've learned how to live more fully without letting anxiety decide the day. Can you see yourself standing a little taller, speaking a little more clearly, choosing what matters to you, even if your heart is pounding? This is not about being fearless, it's about being willing. Willing to try, willing to learn, willing to grow. You already started that today by listening, by reflecting, by preparing. That willingness is your strength. Hold on to it. Take one more breath, let it out gently, and carry that quiet strength with you as you go. In our next episodes, we'll begin using the hierarchy you've created. But today, give yourself credit for building a plan that's not small. It's the beginning of real change. Until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and keep moving forward.